Hello everyone and welcome to YMB Movie Talk from your movie blogger. My name is Salman Mansur and I'm very happy that you've decided to join me today to talk about the best thing in the world, that is films. Now, I am actually joined by one of my good friends on this podcast. I did say yesterday that I was going to have a guest on to talk about some film news, and that friend is George, who's coming on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me, mate.
There we go. Right, I think we can hear you okay. Right, okay, so we've got a couple of topics that we're going to talk about today, guys. Some of the things that we are going to talk about, a lot of them will revolve around D23. If you listened to my podcast yesterday, you will know that a couple of the things I did talk about was about some D23 news. So we're going to get George's opinion on that news as well, and also we're going to get some other news, some more recent news that's come out since I last did my podcast out of D23. And we're also going to be talking about our first topic today, and that topic is giving I wouldn't say review, I'll just say we're going to give our thoughts on the new Quentin Tarantino film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's been out in America now for quite a couple, well, I'd say probably about 2-3 weeks. But it came out last week over here in England, and everyone, well, a lot of people have been, they've had the chance to see it. I'm going to give my opinions a bit after, but I'm going to let George give his first little opinions on what he thinks about, how overall he thinks about the film. So, George, what are your opinions on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Well, I loved it. I mean, it's not Tarantino's best. It's no Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs or anything like that. But it is what it is. It was a Tarantino film. It was very dialogue heavy. There was a lot of build up to one particular moment at the end that I won't spoil for the listeners. But I think the main gist of it was the bond between Cliff Booth, I think his name's Cliff, yeah, Cliff Booth, and got his name already. It's Rick in it.
Rick Dalton.
Rick Dalton, that's it. But the best thing, in my opinion, this entire film was Brad Pitt's performance. He was great. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I can see him being nominated for Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars. So I thought he was the best performance throughout that film. One thing I will say about it is I didn't particularly feel that Margot Robbie, her character wasn't needed for that film, because I feel like they just threw that character in there to add a bit of realism to it, and because it's Margot Robbie. And overall I thought it was a good film. Like I said, probably not his best, but he can't go wrong, can he? Tarantino, he's just a genius. Whatever he does, he's gold. I don't think he's done a single bad film yet. So yeah, I really liked it.
All right then, Rob. I'm kind of with George on this a little bit, but I'm a little bit harsher when it comes to Once Upon a Time. I do think it's a good film. I agree with George in the fact that I don't think it's Tarantino's best work. I'd definitely say Pulp Fiction, the Kill Bill films, Django, and even The Hateful Eight, I'd say, would be better than Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I agree with Brad Pitt. I think he was fantastic in the film. It's interesting that you say Best Supporting Actor. For me, I'd just say Best Actor. I think his role was as important in that film as DiCaprio. I understand. I do understand. I can see you giving me the eyes. I do understand in the fact that that the character that DiCaprio played, Rick Dalton, he was more front and center than the character that Brad Pitt played. However, I would give one film as an example. Have you ever watched the boxing film The Fighter with Christian Bale and Mark Wahlberg?
No, but I am familiar with it.
You're familiar with it, right?
Yeah.
In that film, Christian Bale, he was fantastic in it. He gave one of the best performances I've seen in a long, long time. He's I know you're a big Christian Bale fan as well, so if obviously you've not seen it, so I'd definitely recommend going to see The Fighter. But in The Fighter, Christian Bale wins. I think he won or was nominated. No, I think he won Best Supporting Actor, even though The Fighter, for anyone who's watched it, will 100% know the film is just as much about him as it is about the character Mark Wahlberg played. So I think in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's a very similar situation in the fact that, for me, this is just my opinion, but for me, I feel like there's two leads really than one lead, even though the story focuses more on DiCaprio. I do think Brad Pitt, especially from I'd say halfway in the second act onwards, I'd say his role becomes a lot more important, and then DiCaprio's role kind of reduces a little bit as we get more, in the scene when he goes to the, when he gets to the caravan site, the old filming studio. Yeah. I think from then onwards, it really kind of is his film in a way. Even at the end, which we'll get into in a bit, which is, I know you're very excited to talk about, but at the end, it kind of, again, feels a lot more of the Brad Pitt film, really. I mean, not to say DiCaprio gets shunned out or anything like that, because he gives a fantastic performance. And my other opinions, I would say, I agree again with George in the fact that the Margot Robbie character, Sharon Tate, who actually was a real actress who, if you know her story about the Manson murders, you'll know, obviously, where that goes at the end of the film. But I would say I 100% agree in the fact that she didn't need to be in this film. I think the character was, if anything, I think the character dragged the film down a little bit. It slowed it down and took it away from the main story of this struggling actor trying to kind of find his own identity in a world that's kind of passing him by a little bit. And I think the whole Sharon Tate thing kind of pulls that back. I don't know. What's your opinions on that with the whole Margot Robbie character? Do you think it was necessary, or do you think that could have been probably cut out of the film?
She probably could have been left out of the film, to be honest. I think they just wanted to add a female, well, not lead, but kind of a female supporting role in there, because there's a lot of backlash about directors who don't have main female characters in their films. So. And I know Tarantino had said that he'd been wanting to work with Margot Robbie for quite some time, so I feel like he might have added that character to the film just so he could cast Margot Robbie as that character.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I feel like she didn't need to be there, but she was just added to add a bit of variety to it.
I agree with that in the sense that obviously that's always been a big criticism of Tarantino's work. Outside of something like Kill Bill, I think he always kind of puts the female characters to one side and focuses more on like the male characters and how their story views it. And I think this film is a good representation of how Tarantino, his weak points as a writer. I don't think he's very good at writing women. I think his writing style definitely works better for men. Not to be misogynist or sexist, whatever, but I definitely think that his style of writing suits better for people like Sam Jackson or even John Travolta in Pulp Fiction. It works for actors who have charisma and have got that quick snap. Not to say female actors don't have that, but the way Tarantino writes female characters. Like, I feel that the Sharon Tate character in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was kind of dumb and a bit ditzy and a little bit, away in the clouds a little bit. Which I don't know if Sharon Tate was that way, but that was definitely the way that Tarantino wrote that character. So I think that was one of the weakest points of the film. Another thing that I wanted to talk about, I wanted to get your opinions on this as well. The whole Bruce Lee thing. I went to watch it with my mom in the cinemas, and my mom's a huge Bruce Lee fan. So as soon as that come on, she was loving it. So to her, that was a memorable thing. But it has got a lot of controversy about the way that Bruce Lee was kind of represented, kind of being a bit of a joke, being made out to look a bit of a fool, a bit of a kind of a liar in a way. People, build him up as this legendary martial artist, and then he gets beaten up by a stuntman. It's kind of, people see it as a little bit disrespectful. For me, I think with Tarantino, his work is so in his own world. Like, I know this is set in a kind of a real world situation, but it's his version of it. It's not like he's doing a biopic. You know what I mean? It's not like he's doing a biopic of Bruce Lee or Sharon Tate and he's doing a representation of those characters. He definitely has his own interpretation of that time. And I think the Bruce Lee thing is a good example. How do you feel about how Tarantino represented Bruce Lee in the film?
Well, he was asked about this in an interview because Bruce Lee's, I think it was one of his...
it was his daughter, I think.
His daughter really went after Quentin Tarantino for this. But he went out and said in an interview that Bruce Lee was known to be very arrogant and to be very disrespectful back in his day, and that he'd say things like he could beat up Muhammad Ali, and Tarantino just basically said that he disliked who Bruce Lee was. So I agree with the fact that the way he went about it wasn't the right way. Like, he kind of made Bruce Lee look like a dick, pretty much.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people who worked with Bruce Lee said that he wasn't like that, and yeah, I suppose it's like, that's the dangerous thing about bringing real people into film, perceiving them the right way. I mean, there's been a lot of films that have had criticism for it. Try and think of an example off the top of my head. Ray, Jamie Foxx, when he played Ray, I think he got some good controversy for that because of how he played Ray throughout that film. But yeah, I suppose you've got to be brave to like really make a real life person look bad on film and just accept the consequences for it. You are going to get criticism, you are going to get people badmouth, so I suppose that was just Tarantino wanting to show people what Bruce Lee might have been like, and maybe wanted to, I don't know, not embarrassing, but I don't know, it's hard to say, you know what I mean? Like,
I totally agree with you in the fact that, like I said before with Tarantino, it's kind of his world, it's his representation of real people, it's not like it's a biopic. And I respect the fact that he wasn't kind of tempted to go with the legend of Bruce Lee, of him being this invincible martial artist, like, you know what I mean? The films, if you ever watch films like Enter the Dragon or anything, like, you'll know exactly what I mean by that. Like, he's like this unstoppable force, and obviously he's not going to be like that in real life. I don't even think Bruce Lee even competed in any like martial arts. I think so. It's disrespectful to a point, but then again, I think it's not like you're doing like like having like a character play Brock Lesnar or a Chuck Liddell or a Randy Couture, and you make them out to be a joke that can't fight and get beat up by stuntmen. Like, you know that those guys are legit. Where with Bruce Lee, I think there's always been that stigma around Bruce Lee. It's like, well, he didn't compete in any fights or anything, so it's hard to kind of gauge the legitimacy of Bruce Lee. And I think Tarantino just wanted to have a little bit of fun with it. I think out of everything, I think that's just what he wanted to do. He wanted to make something that was entertaining and fun and kind of subvert people's expectations a little bit. And I think he did that really well. Other things that I kind of felt with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was that I think the film was a bit too long. I think you kind of expect it with Tarantino in a way. Like, his films are quite long, but this film had a lot of window dressing, a lot of things that are there to be there. Like, I think some scenes, the one scene that really stuck out to me because she wasn't so important in the actual story was the whole scene about Sharon Tate going to watch herself in the cinema. And that whole thing, it was dragged out really bad. You even got to like walk into the cinema. She's there standing, looking at about 5 posters, and then she gets called over. She has like a 5-minute conversation with the box office person, and then she gets shown into. I think it's just a little bit too much. I think the woman who has been editing Tarantino's films since he started. I think she stopped editing his films after the Hateful Eight, I think. So I don't think she's the one who edited his film. And even Tarantino has said in interviews before, she's the one who fixes his films. And if that's true that she didn't edit this film, it's very clear to see how he means that. Like, there's a lot of, like I said, window dressing, a lot of people just walking, a lot of people just standing around, a lot of scenes of people doing nothing really. I think this film could have been cut by, I think, at least an hour. The film was close to 3 hours long. I think a 2-hour runtime would have been good for this film. I think it would have gone by a lot quicker. There was parts in the film where it dragged really bad. So I think that's the worst part of the film is the pacing. The pacing's really off. It's nothing bad because there is good comedy in there. There's sharp writing. The film is shot beautifully. It's a beautiful looking film. So it's not like it's visually unappealing, but then in that sense it does drag really bad, and that's one thing that really distracted me. I don't know about you, George, when you watched it, if you picked up on that. But definitely for me, the film dragged really bad. But really, I mean, I'm just going to give my overall opinions on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Overall, I will say this film definitely is worth a watch. If you're going into this film expecting Quentin Tarantino at his best, like if you're expecting Jackie Brown, Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Kill Bill levels of Tarantino, then you're going to be very, very disappointed. Not to say the film doesn't have its good points, because it certainly does. But if I was giving it a rating, I'd probably give it like a 7 out of 10. I think that's fair. I'd say no more than I wouldn't say it's not an 8 and it's not a 6. It's definitely in that 7. It's not average, but it's not great. It's a good film. Definitely, it's a good film. I'd definitely go out and see if you haven't already. It's definitely worth a watch. George, what would you rate Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I think you got it bang on, to be honest, about a 7. Like you said, it just drags. The pacing isn't great compared to his older films. It gave me a lot of Pulp Fiction vibes, like from how there was a lot of long conversations and stuff like that. But I agree with you there.
You go for a 7 as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see it being nominated for any Oscars apart from the one we discussed earlier on. Maybe Tarantino might bag a nomination for Best Director.
I think Best Cinematography. I think definitely Best Cinematography could be in with a shout, because I think the film's beautifully shot. Like, that's the one thing I will say. But away from all the other awards, I wouldn't really give Once Upon a Time. Brad Pitt and DiCaprio definitely are in with a shout for the Best Actor or Best Supporting Actor, whatever you want to nominate them for. But I wouldn't say Best Picture. I mean, there's a lot of the year left to go. If it's just trash till the end of the year, then maybe. But we're gonna have to wait and see on that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Right. That's the first topic done today. Now, this is the topic that me and George have wanted to talk about now for, I'd say, about a week. It's felt like a week anyway. The whole deal with Sony and Marvel and Spider-Man. This whole huge farce of a situation. I have my own opinions on this, and I know they're going to differ from George. So if we do start debating, don't be shocked. But I will let George kind of kick this off with his opinions. But first, I'm going to just give you a little bit of backstory if you've not got any idea what's happened. As you all know, Spider-Man a couple of years ago was introduced into the MCU. Disney and Marvel did a deal with Sony to have Spider-Man in the MCU. There was like not a co-deal as per se, but definitely the deal was that Marvel would produce Spider-Man films, Sony would keep the majority of the box office, with Marvel taking like a 5% share of that. Also that allowed Spider-Man then to be in the Avengers films and any other spin-off films that they wanted to do there. Now the deals come up. I think there's 2 films left on this current deal that's running at the moment, so we'll still get. People have been saying The Way Far From Home ended. I'm not going to spoil it, but the scene in the credits. Everyone's saying, well, what's going to happen with that? How's that going to continue? The Spider-Man deal at the moment does definitely run for another 2 films, so I'm guessing it will be a Spider-Man 3 and an Avengers 5. That's my personal opinion. I think that's what will happen. Which comes first, I don't know. Obviously, we've just got Far From Home, so there's a possibility we'll probably get Avengers 5 first and then get Spider-Man 3. But anyway, the deals come up. Sony, Marvel, Disney, they wanted to renegotiate. And Disney decided to completely take the mick out of Sony with a deal that is one of the most ridiculous I've ever heard of. Obviously, like I said, Marvel and Disney have a 5% cut of the box office with the current deal. Now, I don't think that's fair at all. I think 5% is way too low for how much Marvel have reinvigorated the Spider-Man franchise and what they've done with this character. They definitely deserve more, 100%. But then Disney decided to ask for a 50-50 co-finance share with Sony Pictures for Spider-Man, which also doesn't just involve Spider-Man, but all Spider-Man related characters such as Venom, like the Venom film, the Morbius film, the Black Cat Silver Sable, if that ever happens, Sinister Six. So basically Sony's own MCU is going to be controlled by Marvel Studios, and they wanted the whole 50% thing. To me, this is absolutely ridiculous. This is one of the most worst deals ever put to any film studio ever. They had it really good in the way, because Sony, being a good studio in a way, they come back with a counter offer of a 70-30 split Sony's way. So Sony would keep 70%, Disney would have 30%. And they was going to do it like that. Then Disney rejected that and wanted the whole 50-50 deal. There has been rumours that the deal is kind of getting back on a little bit with Marvel and Sony. They're looking at that 70-30 split, which I think would be perfectly fair. I think that is 100% fair. You can't expect Sony to give 50% of Spider-Man away. That's just never going to happen. He's a cash cow for Sony, so that'll never happen. And also, if they did that, then Sony would lose a lot of the creative freedom that they have with Spider-Man. It just wouldn't work. It just would not work. So the deal at the moment's kind of up in the air. No one really knows exactly what's going on, but as it stands, the deal will end after these 2 films that are on the current deal, and then Spider-Man will be out of the MCU. George, I know you've got very strong opinions on this. Like I said, I'll go to George first for his opinions, then I'll give my opinions. George, what do you think of this whole situation? What are your opinions on it?
Okay, well, my opinion's actually changed a bit.
Oh, okay.
Since we last spoke.
Right.
So, originally when I first heard the news, I was like, fuck you, Sony. You've made the worst decision you could have possibly made. But then, looking more into it, I realised how actually smart the decision was for Sony, because now they have so much leverage on Disney. That's going to make Disney want to... what's the word for it? It's going to entice Disney to renegotiate and perhaps go for this deal that Sony originally wanted. But, I completely agree with the fact that the Disney wanted 50-50 was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's well documented how greedy Disney are in terms of a company, and
I agree with that.
yeah, the complete money hogs, and Sony's the first company to really stick up for themselves to Disney and say, no, we ain't going for that ridiculous offer. We're gonna completely pull this away. We're gonna ruin your plans. But I mean, the best part about this is that Tom Holland and John Watts are sticking around for 2 more movies at least, and I see it as a way for Sony to redeem themselves for the shit that they've gave us in the past with Amazing Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man 2. God, the worst Spider-Man movies ever made.
I agree with you on that as well.
There's also the possibility of, well, not a possibility, but a certainty of Eddie Brock now coming into that universe and seeing Tom Hardy and Tom Holland work together or even work against each other in that universe. There's also all the possibilities of the Sinister Six coming into it now. I mean, what else is going to be interesting? Because they're keeping Tom Holland and John Watts. It's going to be interesting whether they bring Michael Keaton back as Vulture or Jake Gyllenhaal maybe as Mysterio. Because I thought 2 of the best Marvel villains they've had have been Vulture and Mysterio, both absolutely brilliant. And if they do Sinister Six, then I'd prefer them to bring back Keaton and Gyllenhaal than to recast the characters. I know them doing the Craven film, so it'd be interesting to see how they work that into it as well. But hopefully they can work some sort of, well, new deal out that brings Peter Parker back into the MCU and maybe even Venom and Craven and everyone in the MCU as well. Because, I mean, it's no secret that Kevin Feige is probably one of the best producers out there at the minute. I mean, he's a genius. What he's done for the MCU has been absolutely amazing. And, I mean, it's hard to say. There's been so many mixed opinions on it. Like, there's the whole hashtag Storm Sony and all this crap. And, I mean, some people have got a bit over the top with it, saying that, like, oh, I'm going to boycott Sony for what they've done. I mean, come on. Sony, it's adapt to survive in the movie industry, you know what I mean? Like, Sony's got to think of, like, Sony's just putting themselves first, which is just normal for any company. Like, but I mean, I don't think it's going to be long until Disney just buys Sony altogether anyway. I mean, they've already bought Fox, they've already bought, like, Lucasfilms and Marvel. It wouldn't surprise me if they buy Universal so they can get the solo Hulk film rights as well. And maybe they'll go after Saudi as well. But, yeah, I mean, the whole thing's just complicated and annoying, but you've got to look at it from Sony's aspect. And, well, yeah, Sony's aspect that they weren't going to accept that ridiculous offer that Disney offered them, and they just needed to really just push themselves. I mean, there's people looking at it that Sony have been ungrateful because Disney got them their highest grossing Spider-Man film ever made, and Sony just said, we're going to take them away from you now. We've got all the money we need. And but again, it's adapt to survive. Like, if Sony would have accepted that offer, then it would have been like signing a deal with the devil. You know what I mean? Like,
100%.
But yeah, the whole thing's just hard to talk about sometimes because, like, there's so many sides to it, and there's, like, so many possibilities that could come out of it. Like, what's going to happen with that ending that you mentioned? What's going to happen now? Are Sony going to reboot Tom Holland Spider-Man, which I hope they don't?
That'd be the worst thing that they could do.
And it's going to be weird now because obviously Homecoming and Far From Home are part of the MCU, but now that Sony have took Spider-Man away from Disney, are Homecoming and Far From Home now going to be part of the Sony Spider-Man universe? It's very hard to say. It's like, are they canon to the MCU? Are the MCU going to completely just pull the X-Men Days of Future Past treatment on us and completely erase Homecoming Far From Home, which, I mean, it'd be a stupid thing to do because, I mean, everyone's watched Endgame, everyone's watched Infinity War, everyone knows what happened with Spider-Man in this universe. So I guess the only thing we can say is we just have to see what happens and see what the future holds for this character.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give my opinions on it. This whole situation is a fucking joke. Right there, it's a joke. This is an embarrassment for more Disney than Sony. I think, like you said, Sony sticking to their guns, standing up to the big juggernaut that is Disney. And I don't want to go on a Disney rant here because that'll be for another time. My patience is waning with Disney with every day. However, this whole deal, like I said, is an absolute joke. Disney are the most money-hungry, dirty, filthy movie studio that's ever existed. The fact that they even... forget the whole thing with Spider-Man in the MCU. Forget that. Just on the basis of a business deal. I don't know anything about business. I never did a business degree or anything like that. But I can tell you this right now. If someone come up to me, if I owned a business and someone come up to me asking for 50% of what I have when they've done, I'd say a decent amount of work, but they haven't done all the work and they don't deserve half. They're asking for half of everything I've got, not just my business, but they're asking for half of every single thing that I own involving that property. I would go tell them to fuck themselves. I would tell them to get lost and go and drown in a swamp filled with alligators. That's exactly what I'd say to them. The fact that it's not even the 50% thing with just Spider-Man. It's the fact that Disney want 50% of everything. They don't just want 50% of Spider-Man, they want 50% of Venom, of Kraven, of Sinister Six, of Silver Sable, Black Cat, everything. That to me is absolutely disgusting. The fact that you want to have half of something you haven't even worked for me, is a complete joke. And it just sums up Disney, their mentality at the moment. Bob Iger, whoever is running the ship at Disney right now, which I think is Bob Iger, but he needs to really get his head screwed on and realise that if you offer business deals like that, you're going to get turned down. And by a studio that, okay, I know Sony have been going through a couple of difficult times in the past couple of years. The whole thing with the leaks, with the interview, if you remember that, the whole thing with Korea, and that was really embarrassing for Sony. The whole hacked the hacked email scandal. Sony have been going through a couple of difficult times the past couple of years, but I'm not going to lie, for the past 2-3 years, they've actually been on quite a decent run as far as quality, and a big reason for that has been their reinvigoration with the Spider-Man series, which, again, I'm going to say fair play to Feige and to Marvel and Disney for helping Sony do that, because they don't need to. I've always said that Marvel don't need Spider-Man, but Sony need Disney. But they don't need 50%. They don't need that much. That's ridiculous. 50% of everything. It's for me. Okay, people say 5% of the rights to the box office and things for Marvel at the moment in the current deal is quite low. But the one thing people always forget is that with this deal, Disney own 100% of Spider-Man merch. They own 100% of all Spider-Man merch. The merch makes probably more than the actual films themselves. So not only do they've already got a big money maker in Spider-Man merch. No other comic book character, I don't care if it's Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Superman, Batman, whatever it is, no other character makes more money in merchandise than Spider-Man. So they've already got a money pit there with just the merchandise. Then you add the 5% in from the box office when you look at films like Spider-Man Far From Home, which has made over $1 billion. How much is that? I don't even know how much that is. Is that like 50 million? Something like that? They've got 50 million? Something like that? Like 50 million, really, from a film that they've actually had to put no financial risk into. They haven't had to spend a penny on Spider-Man Far From Home. It's a Sony production. So they haven't had to spend a penny on it. So you've got 50 million for doing nothing, but they don't just want 50 million. They want 500 million from Spider-Man Far From Home. That, to me, is the worst thing. Disney are greedy. They're hungry. They don't need it. And to see a studio that's based itself on creativity and I wouldn't say originality because Disney really haven't. Their whole background in their stories have been based off pre-existing material anyway, but they always take that material into a different route. But to see a studio be so money hungry and just, it's like leeching off stuff. I can't believe it. Like, the fact that they put that offer in, to me, absolutely disgusting. It's one of the most diabolical things I've ever heard. You've heard me, if you've ever listened to my podcast, my first ever podcast episode was ranting about Disney, about their live action remakes, how it's just lazy, there's a lack of effort there, it's easily printing money, that's what they're doing. And it's the same thing that they're doing with all this Spider-Man stuff. They just want something that's going to easily print money, and I understand it from a business decision, but you also have to understand it from Sony's business perspective. They're never, ever gonna allow another studio 50% of their most profitable and most financially successful franchise. People say James Bond, but there's been like 5 times as many James Bond films as there's been Spider-Man films. So when you actually look on it per film, Spider-Man's made more than James Bond. So Spider-Man is their cash cow. He's really the only thing that Sony have got right now away from Bond, but it's the fact that Disney want that, to me, is ridiculous. Now, with that being said, there has been a couple of bits of news coming out recently about that deal still kind of, there's extra layers to it. There's things that we don't know. There's things that are carrying on. The deal isn't, the door isn't fully closed, according to rumours. I don't really like reporting on rumours, but I'm just hoping for a little bit there because I love Spider-Man being in the MCU. It's what we've all dreamed of. It's what we've always wanted. I never thought it would happen. I remember me and George have been friends for years. I remember saying to him when we was in school, Spider-Man will never be in the MCU. It's never going to happen. Sony are never going to let go. And then it happened. And I was like, wow, okay, that's the impossible's actually happened. And it's been great. He was brilliant in Civil War. Spider-Man Homecoming was one of my favourite films from 2017. Far From Home, I didn't like as much as Homecoming, but it was definitely one of my favourite films of this year. So he's been great. He was great in Endgame. He was great in Infinity War. So to see all that kind of, not go to waste exactly, but just to see that end will be very, very sad because there's a lot they can still do with this character. And to see it just kind of all go away will be very, very sad to see. So hopefully the two studios can make something of this deal. They can, rekindle that business partnership, and hopefully we can still get this character in the MCU. Or Disney will just buy Sony anyway, which will probably happen one day. Like you were saying, so Disney will probably just end up buying Universal, so they can do that solo Hulk film, or they can have Namor, and they can do whatever they want then. They can probably buy Warner Brothers one day. These things will probably happen, guys, one day. 20th Century Fox are one of the most celebrated companies for film production in the world, and yet Disney's just bought them. So, never say never when it comes to the film business. But guys, I want to know what your thoughts are about this whole Sony Marvel deal. I know it's caused a lot of controversy, but I want to know what you think of it. Is it a good thing that they're breaking up, or do you think it's a complete mistake from both studios and they need to try and work on it? Just leave your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll have a little discussion about that. Right, the next topic that I want to get on to is something that I did talk a little bit about yesterday, but because we've got George on the show and he's such a big Marvel fan and he likes Disney properties as well, want to talk more about D23, and there has been more news come out since then from D23. So I'll just give a little bit of introduction about what has happened so far at D23, and then we'll talk about the extra stuff after. But so far, there's some massive news that have come out from D23 so far. Some of the things, like I said, I talked about yesterday. The new Marvel series with Moon Knight and Miss Marvel and She-Hulk, they've been announced. There was the Lady and the Tramp trailer. The Mandalorian trailer was released as well. The whole thing with the Clone Wars series continuing, that's happening as well. Disney and Pixar have announced a whole slate of original films coming out, which I have been asking for a long time, because I think especially Pixar have been so reliant on sequels, so it's nice to see them go back to the originality well, so to say. So that's going to be exciting to see. But since then, there's been a lot of more news coming out, which we'll get to in a bit. But I just wanted to get George's reaction from what's happened with D23, his reaction to the Mandalorian trailer, Lady in the Tramp, the Marvel series, all that stuff. I want to get George's opinion about D23. So, George, how do you think D23's gone so far?
Very good. I mean, there was a lot of exciting announcements in terms of what's going to be able to watch on Disney Plus, and I mean, we was all excited to see the Phase 4 announcement, but then it was like, oh, there's a lot more to come, and obviously we've just seen what's coming. I mean, Moon Knight, that's something I'm really excited for. Moon Knight, I've been waiting to see him on the screen, whether it be on TV or film, for quite some time. She-Hulk's another character I'm a big fan of. I loved She-Hulk in the old animated Incredible Hulk series, and personally, I'd love to see. I forgot her name, but it's the actress who played Claire Temple in Daredevil as She-Hulk. I thought that'd be a great casting.
Okay, that's quite interesting.
In terms of like the Mandalorian, I've not actually seen the trailer for that yet, but I think that's the one that Jon Favreau's working on. Yeah.
He's the showrunner for it.
Yeah, I mean, if Jon Favreau's involved, then I'm not going to miss it. I mean, I love Jon Favreau. I mean, aside from Lion King, I love pretty much everything he's done, from like Elf to Iron Man.
Elf's fantastic.
Even Zephora, I really like.
Have you ever watched Chef?
Chef, yeah.
Chef's
really
a fantastic film. I think that's his best film, personally. Yeah. I think Chef's fantastic.
Yeah, what else? I mean, they announced that film with Anna Kendrick and was it Bill Hader?
Yeah, is that Onward?
Noel. It's called Noel.
Noel.
It's a Christmas film.
Okay.
And I'm a big fan of Anna Kendrick, so I look forward to that movie. And then, as you just mentioned, Onward as well with Tom Holland and Chris Pratt. I really look forward to that. I mean, Pixar are just brilliant. I mean, if I had to pick their worst film, I mean, I can't really think off the top of my head
probably
right now.
Cars 2 for me would probably be their worst film.
Yeah,
or even Monsters University, which I still think is a decent film, but for Pixar standards, it is quite low.
Yeah.
It's a bit like the whole Tarantino thing with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's still a good film, but it's not what you expect from that. Yeah.
Yeah, really excited to see. I mean, I know us in the UK have got to wait till 2020 to have Disney Plus. They haven't announced a release date for that yet, but they do want to get it worldwide before like April 2020. So I'll be definitely getting Disney Plus because of all the stuff that's been announced. I mean, I can't miss like She-Hulk and Moon Knight and Hulk.
I was going to say, actually, I wanted to get your opinions on the whole Marvel thing with the Disney Plus shows. You know a lot more about Marvel comics than I do. I used to read Marvel comics a couple when I was younger, but it was mainly Daredevil, Punisher, Spider-Man, Hulk. I never really read things like Moon Knight and Miss Marvel, or even She-Hulk, really. And I know that you have a bit more of an understanding of those characters, and we'll get into some of those more as there's been more announcements as well. But I just wanted to get your opinions on the Moon Knight series, on the She-Hulk series and the Miss Marvel series. How do you think that's going to integrate with the MCU? Because obviously a lot of the shows that have been announced so far are characters that we've already seen, but we've not seen these characters yet. So how do you think that's going to incorporate into the wider MCU?
I can see I mean, I can see those three series not being as close to the MCU as like the other ones, such as Hawkeye and that. I think they'll come into it at some point, but I think they might just start off by introducing the characters a bit first, because obviously people might not be as familiar with Moon Knight and She-Hulk and Miss Marvel. So these series might just be a bit of a way to introduce them first, and then maybe later on integrating them into the MCU. But I mean, either way, they had to do something different, because now that Iron Man's gone, Thor's only got one film left, I think, and he's going to be passing it down to Jane Foster. Cap's gone. We're not entirely sure what they're doing with Hulk. So like, they
Definitely need that
to
fresh blood in there, don't they?
Yeah, they needed some fresh characters, and obviously there's no Black Widow either. Hawkeye's hanging up his bow and arrows. So yeah, I mean, very excited. It's going to be interesting to see who they cast as the characters. I'm looking forward to find out who's going to be cast. But in terms of what am I looking forward to most, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure. I'm excited for all of it.
Just invite inside for everything that they're doing.
But, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm with you on that as well. Like, I'm not really got a strong opinion on any of them really, but for me, I'm just excited to see them incorporated into this universe. I just think I don't know much about those characters, but I trust Feige. So it's just one of those things that no matter what they do, Feige's proved himself so much in the past with things like Guardians and Ant-Man and, you know, lesser known characters that for me, he took Black Panther, a character that no one barely ever knows, and it's a nearly $1.5 billion film. So, you know what I mean? I can't doubt the guy really. Like you said earlier, he's a genius, and for me, he's probably the best film producer of all time. I'd probably say maybe Kathleen Kennedy away from that. She's been involved in some huge properties in the past, but for this generation, there's no one better at producing films for me than Feige's track record's incredible. So really, D23 has been fantastic so far, and since we talked about the topics yesterday, there has been some more news that have come out. One thing that I was surprised at really, that this was announced when it was, Black Panther 2 is coming in, I think, May next year. Which is it's really like soon. I wasn't expecting Black Panther 2 this early. I think the first Black Panther came out last year, nominated for Best Picture, which I still think is a joke, but whatever, that's my opinion. Obviously, we had the slate at I think it was Comic-Con, wasn't it? We had the slate for Phase 4. And obviously, there was no Black Panther there. Everyone was asking, where's Black Panther? Like, what's going on? Well, it's coming virtually a couple of months after Black Widow, so I mean that's going to be interesting to see. A lot of people really love Black Panther. I didn't like it that much. I think the visual effects was really distracting. The story was just basically Lion King, just retold with less interesting characters. But there was some good things in there. I like Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther, so hopefully they can do something a bit more interesting this time. So that kind of come out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting that. There's also some news on the Eternals, which you know a little bit more than me about this. Kit Harington has been cast in Eternals. And there's is there other people being cast in Eternals as well? I can't remember.
Yeah, some lesser known actors.
Yeah, I can't think of their names. Yeah, I can't think of the names off the top of my head. But I know Kit Harington, which a lot of people will know from Game of Thrones, and he was in Pompeii as well, which is like a really forgettable film, but he was in that. So I'm interested to see how he fits in that film. The Eternals, again, is a property I know naff all about. I don't know anything about the Eternals, so it'll be a nice surprise. It'll be nice to see how. I mean, it's got a big cast as well, so it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of use all these characters, and if there's some characters that aren't as well put forward as others, and it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out. But so far for me, D23 has been fantastic. I think it's been one of the best D23s that they've done as far as news. You know, the whole thing with all the MCU stuff with the Disney Plus, they're really pushing Disney Plus really heavily. So, you know, expect more news from Disney Plus. You know, I'm liking that they're doing all this original content on there. I think that's going to be something that will draw people to Disney Plus and maybe away from things like Netflix and Amazon and, you know, Now TV and these types of things. I think definitely creating more original things is what's going to give you the edge, especially because it's got that Disney label as well. People are going to be a lot more, you know, pulled to see things on there than they would say on Netflix or whatever it might be. So yeah, guys, D23 has been quite interesting. Another thing I want to mention as well from D23, I don't know if you've seen this, George, but leaked the Cruella de Vil film.
Oh, yeah.
I think you know where I'm going to go with this. They've released a picture of Emma Stone as Cruella de Vil. And guys, I don't like it. I'm sorry. I don't like it. I think it looks ridiculous. Cruella de Vil, it seems like they're taking the character a little bit in a different direction. The character, for those who've watched the animated series, the animated film, shall I say, or the Glenn Close live action films, will know that she's a very 1920s inspired character with the way she dresses, with the fur coats and her attitude. She's like a fashion designer and whatever it might be. And I'm not gonna lie, in this picture, and let me just say, it's just a picture. So this isn't gonna be a judgment on Emma Stone's performance, because she could give one of the best performances of the year. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that. But I think she looks absolutely stupid. She's got this ridiculous leather costume on, and she's got like really thick black eyeshadow. It looks like something from like Sweeney Todd. Like it looks like something from like a 1990s Tim Burton gothic horror film. It doesn't look like Cruella de Vil. It's got the hair, and that's it, really. Everything else looks nothing like Cruella de Vil at all. That isn't Cruella de Vil. That looks like really shit Cruella de Vil cosplay, in my opinion. But like I said, it's just a photo. It depends what they actually do. Not much isn't really known about this film. When is it set? What's the story going to be? Is it going to focus more on Cruella? What's going to happen there? I'm interested to see how they really go about this. Are they going to go down the Maleficent route and make her not really a villain, but more of a misunderstood character? It's interesting to see how they're going to do this. But just based on the picture alone, I think it looks absolutely stupid. George, I want to get your opinions. Like you said, you've seen the picture. What do you think of this image as Emma Stone as Cruella de Vil?
Well, for me, it depends on whether or not it's a prequel. I don't think it's a
prequel, because I've heard that as well. Like people have been saying, it might be a prequel to the Glenn Close films. That is not true. That has been it's their own version of the 101 Dalmatians story, but focused more on Cruella. So it's not a prequel.
Well, in that case, then I completely agree with you. Stupid.
Yeah, it's dumb, isn't it?
If it was following a younger Cruella, because Emma Stone is quite young.
Yeah, I think the character's going to be represented younger than she was in the film, but the overall story, I think, isn't going to change much.
Yeah, I think if it was following a younger Cruella, then I wouldn't have minded, because then it could have showed how she became a different person. But going down that route, don't know, because 101 Dalmatians is one of my favourite Disney movies of all time.
It's fantastic.
Brilliant. And like Cruella was always so scary.
Yeah, she's terrifying.
And you don't really get that vibe from this picture. Like, she doesn't look scary. She kind of looks hot. So you know what I mean. You don't want to be attracted.
They've tried to make Cruella de Vil look sexy, and it looks stupid because Cruella de Vil is not supposed to be sexy. Yeah. She's supposed to be one of the most horrifying people that you could ever meet. And it looks like it's someone that you'd want to go to a rave to. Like, it doesn't look like someone intimidating, does it?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it is just a picture. So until we actually see like a trailer or some footage, not really going to judge it. But based on the picture, not really looking forward to it.
Not really a big fan.
I'm looking forward to Emma Stone's take on the character because she's brilliant. I loved her in La La Land. I loved her in Zombieland.
Superbad. She was great in Superbad as well.
Superbad, yeah.
That was her first film as well, which is like
she's
shocking.
Got such range as an actress. She's done like comedy. She's done drama. She's done horrors. She's one of them. She can adapt to anything. So it's a good job they've got an actress like Emma Stone on this, because if there's going to be one redeeming factor from it, it is going to be her.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, listen, getting talent for anything is always a good idea. Like, if you're going to go and try and get the best people for certain things, you go and get the best around. And Emma Stone is one of the best actresses around right now. Like you said, La La Land, she was fantastic. She was the best part of those terrible, amazing Spider-Man films. She was great in those. You know, she was fantastic in Superbad, Zombieland. Emma Stone has done a lot of films and she's great in almost everything. So, again, I'm very interested to see how her take on Cruella is going to be different from Glenn Close. Again, we talk about Disney with the whole, they don't need to do this thing. Like, there's been 2 live action Dalmatians movies. Like, there's been 2, and they're both really good. Like, they don't need that remake. Like, again, if they're gonna focus more on Cruella than, you know, then okay, you're gonna go down a different route. Fair enough. But again, it's just more unnecessary remakes that we don't need. And, you know, maybe I'm just a bit sour on Disney at the moment with the whole thing with the remakes and you know, the whole Spider-Man deal. My opinion on Disney is dropping a little bit. So maybe that's got something to do with it. But just based on the picture, it looks ridiculous. So I'm still looking forward to it because I love the Dalmatians movies, or like every single one of them. I think they're all great. So I'm interested to see how they're going to do it. I'm glad there's no CGI dogs. That was the one thing I was really worried about. I was really worried about that. But then when I saw Lady and the Tramp and I realised it was actually using real animals, I was kind of glad about that because I was thinking, I really hope they don't use CGI dogs because it's going to look ridiculous. But thankfully, they're not doing that. It's all going to be properly live action, so thank God. But yeah, guys, that will conclude the show today. I hope you've enjoyed it. It was great having George on. It was great to talk films. Obviously, in our spare time, we talk about films a lot anyway, so it's just kind of natural for us to talk about films. So it's great to do it on the podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, you know what to do. Please like, subscribe, share the podcast around. Once again, thanks to George for coming on. Where can they find you on the social medias, George?
On Twitter, at Buzzer the Movie Guy. I've reviewed films on there, and yeah, just check me out on there. Yep,
okay. And you can also find me at YMB Productions on Facebook. I've got my own Facebook page on there. You can find me on Instagram at The Photo and Film Guy, and also you can find me on Twitter at YMB Productions 1. That's where I'm going to be putting all my content on there, so you won't want to miss anything. Also, make sure to hit that notifications bell as well. If you're listening to this on YouTube, make sure to hit that notifications bell so you never ever miss an episode. And yeah, guys, that will conclude the show today. Thank you very, very, very much for watching, and I will get back to you guys very, very soon. See you later.